And the beauty of social media is we are just in connection, but the dark side of the same reality is that we are not connected. The immigration issue is not a political issue only. Church is not promoting to break the law. We have to be very clear. The church is not promoting open borders. And she said to me, this is why they deported you. I wasn't wearing my collar. I was just an immigrant, a brown person in the supermarket. You know, the crucifixion, that is a powerful moment. The idea of receiving hatred and transforming that into love. People in the pews are just brothers and sisters, and they are just, we are kind of, listening to the same word together as family.
Welcome to Planet Cross. I'm Madeline Hines. Today we sit down with Fr Rubén Quinteros. We discuss his diverse journey to becoming a priest, his unique encounter with Pope Francis, and the Catholic perspective on immigration. I enjoyed discussing the universality of the Catholic Church and how our church goes beyond national borders. Planet Cross exists to bring you stories like this. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe, share with a friend, and visit our website, planetcross.com, for more life-changing stories. Fr Rubén, welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're very excited to have you. You've played a big role in not only Katie's life, but also my family's story. And so you've been one of the people at the top of our list to have on the show.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So could you start out by telling us your story?
Sure. Well, my name is Fr Rubén Quinteros. I was born and raised in Argentina, in the northwest part of Argentina, very close to the Andes, the mountains. And I grew up in a Catholic family. I have two sisters and I have two brothers, and one of the oldest one. And I have, I think, 5 nieces now and 1 nephew. And a beautiful family. My mother passed away 2 years ago now, and my dad is still around. But my faith came from my grandparents. They played a very important role in my faith, especially my grandmothers. My family have different backgrounds, a mix of backgrounds. Part of my family has some Middle Eastern background, more towards the what we call the Maronite Catholic Church. So they had a very strong sense of faith because Argentina, as the United States, there are a lot of immigrants, different waves of immigration, and so this is how my family came together as well. So I have a very diverse family. My parents were not very strong in their faith. They were the first generation to attend university, so they had a wonderful, what I call the moral compass, always just doing good, teaching us just to care for the poor, for those who are, they were less fortunate than my family, and but they were not very good with passing on the Catholic faith. They left that to my grandparents. That was their role. So my grandmother was the one in charge, just taking us to Mass and just, keeping us accountable for our faith and receiving the sacraments. But I think around my last year of high school, when I started just considering seriously the priesthood, I wasn't sure about it. I approached my parish priest, and that was my first approach to the vocation. His last name was Saint Nicholas. I always remember because he wasn't, a saint, but just to say Father Saint Nicholas was a really cool idea for me at that age. So we had wonderful conversations, and my parents were just having a difficult time in their marriage at that time. So I remember he just sending me to a vocation director at the diocese where I was from, and And, I was probably 16, 17 years old boy and trying to be honest with everything. So I went to talk to this priest, and I was completely honest, and I will be very open with my vocation story now. I met with him probably for 20 minutes or so, and he asked me about my family. When I explained to him that my parents were just thinking about, divorcing, and they were separated at that time, he looked at me in a way that he said these words, "I don't think you have a vocation." And he said it in a way, nothing good can come from a broken family. And so that was the end of our conversation, the end of my vocation in that way. So I remember leaving, and God had this beautiful relationship with me that I started just talking to him. And I felt in my heart that, I couldn't hold my parents responsible for my vocation. And God told me that. So I remember just very clearly saying, I would keep this in my heart and not going to tell them what happened. And I never said to my parents how the conversation was and anything, but I remember going back to my parish priest and telling him everything, and he said, don't let anyone to tell you what God is already saying in your heart. Just keep, trying. But I went to college, and then I had this beautiful experience during my college years, praying and, going to the church, because I felt very lonely. I felt it was a state college, so I felt like all my classmates were in a different direction that I was. So my refuge was the church, going to adoration, and there were monks close to the the university campus that they were just seeing me and they just approached me and talking to me about vocation. So I had my very first experience of my vocation with them, with Monastic Life. So I went to a come and see retreat with them, and I decided to stay. So that was my first call, and so I was in a religious life, in a monastic life for 6 years, and I advanced in my formation. I made my vows, but I had that idea of, discerning if God was calling me to be a priest. I wasn't sure, and according to the rules of that monastery, the person, the prior, is the one deciding, according to the number of monks in the monastery, how many could be priests. And they asked me to go to the seminary to have the formation for priesthood, and I was not sure about it, but obedient. So I went on, and it changed my life. And I was sent to Mexico for a new foundation, a new house, and I had my first experience with people, in ministry, working with them as a seminarian, and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I consider myself an introvert, so monastic life was the right thing for me, but God showed me that I could be, a social person, doing ministry and helping others. So I just worked with my spiritual director, making sure I was discerning well what God was calling me to do. And I approached my order and I said, well, I'm thinking about the diocese and priesthood. I think that is another vocation that God is calling me now. So I left religious life without having a place to go. My idea was to go back to my home country, the same diocese that kind of, rejected me in the beginning. And but it was a Carmelite nun that I met, and she knew a few priests from Little Rock, and she told me, I was teaching classes with the nuns, and she said, We have been praying for you, and I want you to meet a priest from Little Rock, Arkansas. And before you make your decision, I want you just to meet this priest. So I met Father Salvador Marquez from our diocese, and then Monsignor Scott Friend, and everything changed. And I said, okay, let me just, try, and came here from, Argentina. And the first time I remember coming to Little Rock, I just fell in love with nature, with the church, with the reality of our diocese. I didn't speak any word in English, so that was a huge thing that I have to accomplish. And I said to the Lord, if you want me to stay here, let me just learn the language, and I will give you 6 months, and if I cannot do it, I would just be okay with, going back to Argentina. But I remember, going through the classes, ESL, English as a second language, and my instructor told me not to do what we call the TOEFL test, to prove your English skills for a university level. And I said, well, I think I want to do it. And I tried, and I failed. And that was my first test. And she said, well, now you have to wait at least 3 months. And they're very expensive tests. So the diocese paid for the first one, and I failed. So a week later, I registered for another one and just paid with my own money because I didn't want to, be a burden to the diocese. And I passed the test. So I just called Monsignor Friend. I remember very happy. Okay, I'm ready just to move forward in my vocation and just start theology. I already finished my philosophy by then in the Catholic University in Argentina, and I got a theology degree as well. But something that he told me when I came here was, I want you to go to theology at least to see if you can get a degree from American University, so you feel at home in the same way that all our priests are. And I accepted the challenge, so I transferred some credits, and I started theology again, and I finished that, and I was ready for ordination, and I was ordained in 2010, and I served different communities. I started in Northwest Arkansas, in St. Raphael, the biggest parish in the diocese, and then I moved to St. Barbara in the Queen in the south, and from there I work in the formation of seminarians. I work in the vocation team for another 6-7 years. Then I took over Immaculate Heart of Mary, IHM, where I met your family, and I became the pastor of St. Mary's at the same time. I had these 2 parishes and 2 schools for a few years, and less than 2 years ago, I took over the Diaconate Formation Office, so I'm the director for the Diaconate program and the pastor of St. Mary's now. Very brief, way to see my whole life.
Mm-hmm. So your seminary, did it start in Argentina, and then did you also do a little bit in Mexico, and then finished it in the United States?
That is correct, yeah.
How did that work?
Well, just transferring credits is not very easy from one country to another, different institutions, but being part of the Catholic Church, that helps a lot because, the curriculum, they are very similar. The Vatican is just sending the curriculum for priesthood, and each conference of bishops has a different approach to it. But, we have general idea of the framework of the formation to the priesthood. So that part was easy. Sometimes the language barrier, even moving from Argentina to Mexico, we speak the same language. We call Spanish. In Argentina, we call Castellano. But still, there are some differences in the language as well. So, I think always I see the church as that idea of the universality of the church, the Catholic Church. And, having that idea that whatever part of the world you are from or wherever you go, you always just go to the same mass. That I think I have the same feeling with my formation, having the opportunity to be shaped in that way in 3 different countries. It was a blessing, yeah.
And how was that relationship with the Carmelites? But they were in Mexico, and you had a relationship with them, and they knew people from Little Rock.
Yes, I think that is a story that probably Father Salvador can tell you, but he was a Carmelite as well. And he became a diocesan priest here in Arkansas. I don't know very well his, journey to that, but the connection was that after his ordination, he went back to the Carmelites that he knew in Mexico to celebrate Mass for them, and it's how we connected. Yeah.
That's interesting. So could you tell us a little bit about growing up a little bit with the Maronite rite, how that was a little bit different? Because you were talking about the universality of the Catholic Church, and you even had more of that experience, not only through different countries, but also experiencing a different rite in the Catholic Church.
I think my first experience was in the United States, actually, just going to a Mass in the Maronite rite. I went to school in St. Mary's Seminary, that is part of St. Thomas University in Houston, Texas. And part of the program, formation program, during the 4 years of theology, we experienced different Catholic rites in different churches. And Houston gives you that opportunity that it's a big city. They have different, faith families in the Catholic family. So I had the blessing to go to this Maronite church, and knowing that I have some roots, but I know the part of the history of my own family, and I think many Lebanese families in the northern part of Argentina, that they lost that connection with the rite, but not with the Catholic faith. So they didn't have the opportunity to bring their priest or their own, church. But they joined the Roman Catholic Church. So this is how we grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, in that specific part of my family, yeah.
And what was your family's reaction when you told them that you were considering the priesthood?
My grandparents, my grandmother was thrilled and supportive. I had a lot of support from my siblings. My parents, it was a different journey for them. It took a few years especially for my mom, to embrace my vocation. And actually, I think that happened after my ordination, when she saw me. I have a powerful story. After my ordination, I think probably year after, I went back to Argentina to visit my family, and I celebrated Mass in the parish. And I got there, and before Mass, a few minutes before Mass, that is something very common in Latin America, the sacristan was there and said, "By the way, Father, since you are here, the pastor took off, and so he wanted you to do some baptisms after Mass." And so I'm glad it wasn't, so many, but there were few. So my family was just planning to have a celebration, a family reunion after Mass. And I was like, okay, I would do it, but I have to get back to my family. So my mother decided to stay with me after Mass, and the whole family left after Mass. So we were just, doing baptism. My mom was just looking at me, and I remember very clearly that after Mass, they were taking pictures. And since I lost my Argentinian accent, many people say, "Oh, let me just have a picture with Father. He's a missionary." Like, well, actually, I'm from here, but, so, and I remember my mom was just there, and they were the photographers. And I thought, okay, it would be a good idea to have a picture taken with my mom. So I called my mom, and this lady, without any bad intention, she pushed my mom away and saying, well, you are, you didn't have any baby baptized or anything. What you're doing here? The lady didn't know she was my mom. And then the mom was crying, and I just thought, okay, she felt, probably left out or discriminated. So I went down and said, Mom, it's okay. And she said, no, I'm not crying for that. And she said this to me, to my ears. She said, just crying because I realized just you don't belong to me anymore. You belong to them. You belong to the church. And that was the first time I realized, okay, my mother embraced my vocation for the first time. It was a beautiful moment with, between us. And since then, my parents were very strong support of my vocation. And my dad has a moment too that he showed me how important it was for him to have a son that is a priest, and how proud he was. So the journey was different, but I said my mom passed away, but at the end of her life, she was very involved in the church, and so she had her conversion as well.
Do you think you becoming a priest had an impact on that?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And we have this beautiful tradition that, after you are anointed in your hands, they clean the manutergio, we call it. They clean your hands with this piece of fabric. And we reserve that fabric when your mom passed away. That is what we put in the coffin of a mother of a priest. So the tradition says that Jesus Christ will recognize this person in heaven as the mother of a priest who gave a son to the church. And always just, when I brought that little box with the fabric to my mom, I said, I don't know if I need to give this to you or to my sisters, because if you pass away, we need to know where that is. And I said, Mom, this is very important, right? And always she said, well, I hope I did my own marriage too, but she was very, very happy about my vocation and just giving my life to specifically to this diocese.
It's very beautiful. So you said you lost your accent, your
Yes.
Argentinian accent. Was it because you spent time in Mexico or in the
Well,
U.S.?
when I was in Mexico, I went to a speech therapist to have more like a neutral Spanish. They kind of make fun of me because my accent. So I had to work very hard to lose it, right? Then I came here, and trying to learn a new language, I had to be 24/7 thinking and dreaming in English. So I had to push myself not to speak a lot. So because the temptation is always just to go where you feel comfortable. And if you don't practice, you lose it and you are not learning. So I think it was not intentional, but little by little I started just losing it. But when I go back, and if I spend probably a month there, I would just pick it up again. But still, there are words, and there are some Argentinian families here in town that when we get together, it comes back. But when I go back to speak to Mexicans or different part of Latin America, they look at me and say, you don't speak like that, and so I have to go back to my Mexican accent, and so I can play with different accents in Spanish, yeah.
Is that just to make you a better preacher so more people generally understand you?
It helps with, especially with accents, phrases, slangs, things like that they use in a different way, and even words that have different meanings, right? People don't realize that sometimes, but like Argentina has different words for fruits and vegetables that the rest of Latin America uses. So we have kind of learned a different language in that way. Yeah.
I didn't know that in Argentina they call it Castellano.
Mm-hmm, they do. Yeah, I have to be with the influence. Most of the people coming from Spain to Latin America came from one region. And the people that went to Argentina came from a different region. People don't realize that people in Uruguay and Argentina are from a very specific part of Spain. So that, influenced in the way that we learned the language, in the way that we use our Z's and Z and the pronouns, vos, those kind of things. Yeah.
What were the regions? I'm assuming in Argentina is probably from Castilla y Leon.
Well, it's a big presence of people from Galicia as well in Argentina, but in the 1800s, Argentina has a huge influence of Italian immigrants. So most of Argentinian families has some Italian background as well. So.
And so, speaking of Argentinian families with some Italian background, you have a cool story with Pope Francis.
Oh yeah. Well, the story is when I was ordained in 2010, I went back to Argentina to celebrate Mass for those family members that couldn't be here for my ordination, extended family, my grandmother, and my Bishop Anthony Taylor. He wanted to go and see my family as well, so we went together. And in our trip, we decided to stop in Buenos Aires, and we went to the cathedral. And he asked me the question about if we could see the cardinal in Buenos Aires. That was Mario Bergoglio. And I said, sure, why not? But I think we have to make appointments, and so we went to a gift shop at the cathedral, and the person there pointed out to the office. They said, well, that door, just knock at the door. So it was a receptionist, and we just said, well, we want to see if we can see Cardinal Bergoglio. This is my bishop. And she said, sure, let me see. And I thought, okay, it will be the secretary coming, making an appointment. But so he opened the door for us and introduced himself, which he asked me a few questions. And I remember part of our conversation was that, the influence of our grandmother, because he had a big influence from his Italian grandmother. So I was just telling him that I came back to Argentina to celebrate Mass for my grandmother, who prayed for me all these years on my vocation. And I wanted to celebrate Mass with her, and so we had that conversation. I think 3 years later, I think it was 2013, he became the Pope. And the first thing that happened after they announced that he was the Pope, I was so impressed that, he's a Pope from Argentina, but I didn't connect it, so I know him. I met him, and Bishop Taylor, he remembered the story, so he called me and said, remember that we went to Buenos Aires? Yeah, we met him, and the same year I went to Rome, and I was in the crowd, big crowd, and I found an Argentinian family that were drinking mate, the tea that we drink. And so we became like, friends, and they said, well, when Pope comes, just offer a mate, you are just wearing your collar. He will look at you. And so he passed by and he looked at us and he waved. And so then I just screamed his name and offered a mate, and he looked at me and he said, well, I had one this morning. So we had this conversation while I don't know how many thousands of people were there in the plaza in St. Peter's Square. But we had that kind of, interaction. I wish I could ask him, I don't know if you remember me, but, I'm sure he did. But that was my story with Pope Francis, yeah.
That's cool. I think it's also neat that our next Pope is American, and so both of your countries have had popes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah.
How do you think Pope Francis's Latin American heritage impacted the church, and I guess the fact, and as well, that we have had, I guess, 2 American popes in a row?
Right. I believe that every pope that we had, I don't know, in the last 50 or even more than that, had been a continuation of the predecessor, the previous pope. There are so many people try to, distance or separate one pope from the other, but I don't see it in that way. I could just see how wonderful the transition was from St. John Paul II to Benedict XVI, and then Benedict XVI to Pope Francis, and how they, as we had two popes, one emeritus pope, and the pope were just coming together many times. And then Pope Francis now with Pope Leo. And Pope Leo has this beautiful way to refer to Pope Francis in his, speeches and documents. But I think that Pope Francis, and we would learn with time and probably with years, we will see his time in the church, leading the church in a different way, because we are evolving in the way that we see, in the vision, in our theological way of seeing things from, today, and looking at the past, and happened in the history of the church so many times. So Pope Francis had this beautiful idea coming from a Latin American country, trying to see the universal church as a enormous parish, right? And he had that kind of idea. He was like a parish priest for the whole world, right? And he approached different things in that way. So I think he has this beautiful influence of, Latin American faith and traditions that influence in the way that he saw the universal church and how he was a shepherd to the people. So this is why I believe he was sometimes misinterpreted or misconstructed in his thoughts, but there are many people that felt blessed by Pope Francis and his ministry. But again, I think in few years in the future we will see his way of leading the church with different eyes and a different vision.
Mm-hmm. And also he is like the first pope that was all over social media, because social media really got big while he was pope, and so
right,
everything he did, everyone saw it.
Right. And social media could be very tricky sometimes, right? And know everything that we see, everything that we read is true. And sometimes people just take everything out of context. And the beauty of social media is that we are communicating and we are just in connection. But the dark side of the same reality is that we are not connecting, that we are not being truthful, and we can hide behind, our phone screen to say things that we cannot say to the person, face to face, and we are losing that kind of humanity. So I think Pope Francis tried to bring that humanity to social media, and I think he paid a good price for it, right? Just sometimes being loved and sometimes being questioned.
Mm-hmm. And Pope Leo with AI and instructing on how to use AI properly, and he's on social media a lot too,
Right.
with his Instagram account and the different news agencies that post him all the time. And he's probably going to be under a lot more visibility than Pope Francis
for sure.
even was.
I think he had been doing interviews outside of his residency. Sometimes there the reporters waiting outside, and he just exchanged some words. Probably most of the messages to the American church had been in that way, and I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
A little more intimate approach to it.
Right.
Although he's very even-keeled, and I think he has to be just very even and neutral with everything because he's on social media all the time and involuntarily.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the USCCB just released their special message about immigration. And speaking of interviews with Pope Leo, someone asked him about it outside of his residence. What can we take away from that special message, and how can we apply it to our lives in the United States?
What a great question. Just living with the reality of being an immigrant in this country, that I have received so many blessings, not only in my vocation, but in my personal life. Having friends that they are from here, Native American, born American people, and friends that I made through these years of service to the church, people that I serve and shepherd with the reality of being immigrants in our country. Sometimes it's hard for me to speak up about this reality because I know how divided we are in our society. I don't think the division is in the church in the way that the church states very clearly where we are at, what our position is. So the division is sometimes in our minds and hopefully not in our hearts, to embrace what the church is teaching us and to considering that, immigration issues have to be seen not from the faith perspective, but a human perspective, that they are human beings, that they have, rights that no law can take away from them. And this, the controversy is just breaking the law, and if that is a civil law, it's just all these kind of things is a criminal. It's we can just discuss and take this in different ways, but at the end, seeing the person, and this is what the church is inviting us, with the dignity that God created us. This is what every person and every Christian should do. And always is easier to embrace, easier in that way, to embrace the law and the consequences of breaking the law as part of the rule, right? That we don't put a human face to the situation. But in my experience as a priest, I never met a person that listening to the story of immigrants, the hardships that they are going through, can just apply the same rule to the person, right? And this is what we need to understand. And the church is not promoting to break the law. We have to be very clear. The church is not promoting open borders. And we have the right as country, but just to see the immigration issue, and I think the bishops in our country and our bishop, we had the blessing to have a bishop in our diocese here in Little Rock that always advocates for our people, for our immigrant community. I think it's important that we consider that when we go to, to the discussion in the immigration issue is not a political issue only. So that is a very complex issue, and it's close to my heart. I serve an immigrant community now, and I know how difficult it is, right? We can just talk for hours about the law, the consequences, the process of becoming a legal immigrant in our country, how unjust that the process is, how broken the system is, But at the end, as a pastor, what I care for is the family that is here coming to my church every Sunday, sitting in my pews, the message that I'm, sending, how I help them to overcome the fear of having a life built in this country, and now they have the fear to go out and do groceries and things that we just give for granted, just leaving kids in school and not knowing if the parents will come back to pick them up. These little things that they are part of our daily life, and we don't realize that sometimes our immigrants, brothers and sisters, have to go through all these uncertainties and still build a life with those uncertainties and fears. It's a very difficult issue to talk about, especially with my reality as an immigrant. Sometimes people feel like I don't have the credentials to say much because I am an American citizen, and I was naturalized. I don't know how many years ago, a long time ago now, but and I went through the whole process, but it took a long time, and still sometimes I found people that they don't know I'm a priest, and just a normal person going to, I don't know, to buy whatever, and I've been questioned and discriminated, and I cannot imagine that sometimes I have the ability to stand up for myself and just say things to people, right? Just be nice, be kind. Those who cannot speak for themselves, they are afraid to do it. It's hard for me to understand that. Yeah.
What I took away from the message was really that, like, anyone who is Catholic, so we have Catholics in the government, we have Catholics who are ICE agents, we have Catholics who are legal immigrants, Catholics who are illegal immigrants, and Catholics who are on all sides of the political spectrum. And I think what's important to note there is that when we interact with someone who, like, we don't know what their immigration status is, we need to first see them as like a brother or sister in the Catholic faith, because that's more important than where they came from or what their legal status is. And so everyone needs to keep that at top of mind. So even people in the government who are regulating immigration, they need to keep that in mind, like the humanity of everyone in mind. Because I think it could be taken too far one way, where, like with Jesus, for an example, he doesn't just say, oh, everything's good, I love you no matter what. He does have rules for us that we need to follow, but he's also not super harsh with those rules in terms of, like, I'm going to hold this to you forever and deny your humanity in it. He sees us as, like, how we fully are, and we need to be models of Christ in that way, where it's like, if someone has broken a law, we can't just now treat them as inhuman, because they are still humans, and especially if people on both sides are Christians or Catholics, that like to see a brother or sister first, and that they are breaking the law, and we need to enact justice in that way, but not dehumanize them or be rude to them anyway.
Right. I believe is how I see the Bible full of stories of encounters, especially the New Testament. And you can see Jesus encountering the person where the person is at, in their situation, in the story. And that encounter changed everything. And then is the idea of, okay, now follow me, right? And we see that sometimes as disciple of Jesus, we are lacking that part. Okay, if I want to be Jesus, I want to be like Jesus, let me encounter you where you are at, trying to understand what is your need, what is your story. And then let us talk about discipleship, right? Sometimes we want to move so fast without considering that part that we need a kind of, theology of the encounter. And I think Pope Francis and Pope Leo are very strong about it. And I think immigration could be understood in the same way. Let us encounter these, not like the immigration issue that could be very political, but this person that came to the country when he was 10 years old, or this person that came just fleeing the country from violence, and what is going on, how you build your life here with all the obstacles. People that they have their jobs for over 20 years without speaking the language, and people say, well, why you don't speak the language? Just learn. But I mean, how you could work for so long without, knowing the language in that way. But I believe most of them just, because I love languages, I think most of them, they understand very well because, they have this encounter with the English-speaking people all the time. But they have this knowledge, but it's just so impressive to me that they are here to help us to build this country as well. They contribute to the country, and sometimes we are not we are taking that away from them. They are a vital part of our society as well.
Yeah. And with the statement, I think some people might think that it was a little bit too vague, like just be nice to people in the kind of tone. But I think that might be the correct approach to it, because the Catholic Church isn't trying to tell the government exactly what to do. It's more just guiding the Catholics who live there. This is how you should generally think about it. And I think within the church, whether it's the person that's sitting next to you in a pew or whether you're the pastor for that person, asking them, like guiding them in their story first and meeting them where they're at and handling it on an individual basis, where if they did break the law, that you guide them, hey, here's some ways that we can help you rectify that, and maybe counsel them through that process. Or if they are unjustly judged against, whether because they are here fully legally, but people might be thinking otherwise, that letting them know how they can stand up for themselves if they do find them in that kind of situation. I have some coworkers who came up from Latin America a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't really think anything of it, but when we were about to go out and walk around downtown, one of them was like, do I need to keep my passport with me, just in case? You should keep your passport with you if you're traveling to any foreign country. But I was like, yeah, but I think you'll be okay. And there is just that fear of if you look like you're from Latin America, then there can be people that might question.
Right. Something happened. I would tell you a story that how this is how people could sometimes be so trying to find the right words here. Influenced by the social political environment and how you can judge things without knowing the how I say this. I would tell you a story just to illustrate that. That happened probably more than a month ago, and few friends now. If this goes online, probably many people will know. But one day after a busy day, I was going to the supermarket. I have to get some stuff for the week, and I am diabetic, so I have to read the labels of everything that I buy making sure I have, the carbs, the sugar, and all these things. And so I was with my card in a supermarket. I'm not going to say the name. And I was trying to read the labels because the letters sometimes are the print is so small. I'm just wearing my glasses, but I was trying to read that hard. And I left my card unattended. It was in the middle of the aisle. It wasn't my intention to do that. But this lady was behind me, waiting for me to move the car. And I thought she could ask me, can you move the card? And I would just, gladly say, oh, I'm sorry. So when I realized that she was behind, because she pushed the cart with her, and I just said, oh, I apologize. And I moved my card to the side. And she said to me, this is why they deported you. I wasn't wearing my collar. I was just an immigrant, a brown person in the supermarket. I had a lot of things that crossed my mind that I could say to her. I was just thinking I would chase her and just had a conversation saying, okay, if I can gain you my side, saying I'm not a bad person, I'm just an immigrant here, an American citizen, but at the same time, I had a lot of compassion for her. Whatever, distorted image she had, how this idea of, like a 24/7 news channel are shaping the way we think, the way that we feel. But at the same time, having a lot of empathy for my immigrant community, like they go through that every single day. I can count with one hand the times that something like that happened in my history here in the country. But some of them, they have these situations every single day. And I want to cry. I mean, when I had this sense of compassion that I didn't experience before because it happened to me, that somebody had the courage to say those kind of words to me, and just God told me, well, you are, no special in that way. And because Jesus wanted just to take our face, our shape, and our humanity and share that with us. And as we approach to Christmas, and this is what Advent is all about, to understand why he wants to be one of us. So it kind of changed my perspective and saying, well, it's not the right time. And probably it's not the right time for her to understand that. And I have to let it go. And that is the hard part for me. Like, okay, just stay quiet and be kind, even when people are not kind to you.
And I bet that's also really hard too, when a lot of the, I guess, the hate that comes towards people who are immigrants, when they are here legally, like they have the full complete right to be here. They have immigrated totally legally, but then they still get some of the backlash that people want to be directed towards people who are breaking the law.
Right. I think it's a profound invitation through faith to see, the crucifixion. That is a powerful moment in our history. Not only the salvation brought by, the crucifixion and death, but the idea of receiving hatred and transforming that into love and self-sacrificial love. And that is the heart of our Christian vocation, right? At the end, whatever political, social situation we are going through, and we still have that idea of self-sacrificial love if we are Christians. If we consider ourselves as a Christian nation, to understand that whatever I receive, I can just transform and give back to you as love. And I think that is a very strong invitation. Doesn't matter what part of the spectrum of you feel like you are at and how you feel about these issues and others, you still are just called to love.
Mm-hmm. And also that the hatred that Jesus felt was not justified at all.
Right.
And so when someone does experience unjustified hate.
And we can go deeper. That hatred was legal in the Roman Empire. And he was condemned by the law in that way.
Yeah. And I think with the Catholic Church, with it being the universal church, the church that is in, I think, every single country now, that we exist outside of any government bounds, which I think it's a good thing, but can also be something that can run into some problems because you can't fit the Catholic Church into a political spectrum. It's outside of it. You can't fit it into a government system. It's outside of that too. And then also the fact that in the United States, a lot of our priests are here on either temporary visas or are immigrants and become U.S. citizens. And it's been immigrant priests the entire time who have formed the Catholic faith in the United States, whether that's from the very beginning when we had our first Catholic missionaries coming over up until today. We have lots of priests from India, Africa, Latin America. They're coming from everywhere.
Right. And I mean, the reality of our diocese, how many, priests from other dioceses are serving because we are considered a missionary diocese in that way. So I don't know if we will be able to serve all these parishes if we didn't have these priests that they are willing to serve our people. And I think the USCCB always remind us about this beautiful document is Faithful Citizens, I think is the name, that everything that, every time that we go through election time, we have this document. And we are still Catholics, we are called to be faithful citizens, right? To obey the law and to just always look for the common good. I think that is important to understand, but try to canonize in that way a political party that aligns with all the Catholic teaching is not possible. Mm-hmm. And it's not such a party that would do that. And sometimes people have a hard time to understand it. Yeah? So I believe that is essential for people to hear that. The Catholics, we understand we are not promoting any any political party because we see, pros and cons in each political party that we have. Mm-hmm. But still, people wanted just the answer, right? They just tell me that what I believe, what I think is the right thing is what the Catholics should be doing. And sometimes many of the bishops leave that to our own conscience, where God speaks, right? So that it's very interesting to live our faith in that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now having an American Pope is going to, I'm not sure if he's going to vote in the next election, but people, when he got elected, they pulled up his voting records from last year. And it's interesting now that we can do that with the Pope since he's American.
Right. And I think that will give Pope Leo the right in to speak to us to our society and to our country, especially to Catholics in our country, with the sense of he knows and understands the reality of the country, the history, the background. It's different when a pope is not from our country just telling us, he said, well, you don't live here, you don't understand. And I think that is a very easy way to disregard sometimes what we should do as Christians, saying, oh, they are just foreigners, they don't understand. But Pope Leo is an American, and he when he speaks, he's telling us how we should live our Catholic faith in this kind of environment.
Mm-hmm. And he has also perspective from being a bishop in Peru as well.
That's
so
right.
I think that's probably why he was elected Pope, is because he had such broad experiences with different Catholic dioceses in the world, and also being trilingual. Like that
Right.
That's really good.
Yeah, and I think he spoke some Turkish too. These past days that he had a meeting there in Nicaea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's an amazing pope, and just very excited about his time leading the church.
I got to see him from a distance in June.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you were there in Rome.
I went to Rome
Yeah.
in June, about a month after we were confirmed, and we got to see him from a distance.
That's good. I hope to go to Rome soon, hopefully.
So our Diocese of Little Rock, it's still considered a mission diocese?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is a mission territory. Yeah.
And what makes it a mission diocese, and how long has it been a mission diocese, and how long will it continue? At what point is it no longer a mission?
Well, that is a great question. I don't have the answer. What will make us a non-missionary diocese or mission territory? But just the reality of being in the South, and Catholics being a minority, I think is part of the reasons why. So I believe the Catholic population in our diocese or in our state represents less than 7% of the whole population. So that determines, if the Catholic presence is a mission territory or not. So even though, our foundation as a diocese, or the how you call it, has a different word for that, established as a diocese, have been, in the same time, I think Chicago, in another diocese, I don't remember the other diocese, we were just erected as a diocese at the same time. But we can see how apart we are with, our history and the population, the Catholic presence. But I think the Catholic Church is growing in the South, and is growing in our diocese. And we can see, even people sometimes don't share that kind of good news, but our Mass attendance is growing in most of the parishes in our diocese. So to answer your question, I don't know what it would take, for us not to be a mission territory, but I think as long as we are, it's a wonderful reality that we can embrace, having the people working together, the lay people and the priests that they are from this diocese, and priests that they are, coming to serve the diocese. That experience, I think, is wonderful. Yeah. So I invite people that sometimes are just here in Central Arkansas or Northwest Arkansas, where most of the Catholic population is. But if they go to, the south of our diocese, or the east of our diocese, to experience, just to go to Mass to these small parishes and how alive faith is, even when they are just few families coming together and they are keeping the Catholic Church alive. I think it's important that we experience that, and we are part of the same family. And we have to find a way, I think, we have to do a better job that they feel supported by these big parishes that we have here or Northwest, that we are part of the same family. Yeah.
When we had Sister Cecilia on, she shared how it was the small pockets of the Catholic communities in Vietnam that they were all supporting each other in their faith, and that's what made them so strong in their faith. And they had a lot of religious vocations, and like priests come out of that as well,
Right.
because they had such a tight, close-knit Catholic community in the middle of essentially a Catholic island.
I believe that, we have, I don't know, the last probably 20 years, and the vocation director can just say more about it, but our vocations have been flourishing in our diocese. Probably not in the way that we would like to see, so to catch up with the lack of, presence of, priests or local priests that we need. But it still is a huge blessing, the number of seminarians that we have. And I believe that growth could be measured in the way that how faithful we are to the mission. And that goes not only with the church, even with companies. If you are faithful to the mission that you were created for, in our way that we were just established for, the salvation of the souls, if we are faithful to that, God will take care of the rest. And I do believe that. And so I think that prayers for vocation works in that way, that we have faithful families coming together, because it's where the vocations are coming from.
That's what she said as well. She said that a lot of the religious vocations might be down because people are not having as many kids and they're not being as faithful in their families. And so there's not as many. Why do you think our diocese is growing and our mass attendance is growing?
I think have to do with the reality with the universal church. I think, and even, we talk about how controversial sometimes the Pope's statements could be in the last 5 popes, but I think it's a new blood, a new air, a fresh air in the Catholic Church, that there are a lot of people like yourself, Katie, that they are bringing to the church, and I think that is a wonderful thing that we priests have to pay attention to, because you are bringing a lot of things that we are not used to. Even just seeing blessings in disguise, like everything that happened with COVID, and we have to close everything and get an experts in social media, in cameras, and all these kind of things in few weeks, just in order to provide mass and ministry to people. And when we feel now that time is over, but it changed our way of seeing things, and we have to still evangelize. And using those kind of things, that you are reminding us that still we are here, we are part of the growth, and we are just bringing our gift, our talents, and this is how we communicate now. And we have to pay attention to that. And I think it's wonderful, right? Still, I don't think that it replaces technology, would never replace this human contact, right? The idea of just having an interview, and I think it's important to see face to face, and it's a huge thing with sacramental preparation as well. I love to facilitate and try to help people to get there, but I still have to have that contact. I have to meet you. I have to see your face. How, just tell me about your desire to receive the sacrament, to be married, to receive the communion, or be admitted in the church. Still, we have to do our part, and I think we have to use both technology and this human touch that we need for evangelization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, digital evangelization is a really big thing right now. I mean, that's basically where my story came from, is through a podcast and through watching a lot of videos on YouTube, which inspired us to do this podcast. But yeah, the thing that I really, really like about the Catholic faith is that it's incarnate, that we interact with it with our bodies, because you cannot receive the sacraments through a screen. Like, it has to be a person there. There has to be actual elements to it, and that it's not just something that is spiritual that you can do by yourself in your room, but you have to actually engage with it with other people and in a physical way.
Right. And that is something that I learned through my formation in Christian spirituality, just to live an incarnated spirituality. That is essential to understand Christian spirituality. I think sometimes people just think how powerful it is that any part of the world that you are, you can go to Mass and listen to the same readings, the same gospel, and it's powerful. It's the same Mass. But even more powerful is to know that people in the pews are your brothers and sisters, and they are just, we are kind of, listening to the same word together as family. Doesn't matter what language that word is proclaimed, even the rite that is celebrated, right? We still are part of the same family. And I think that is powerful, that we are connected in that way. And still we don't see each other, we don't know each other, but the same Mass and I'm celebrating here in Arkansas, in my little St. Mary's, it's the same Mass in a village in Africa, in the mountains in Latin America, in the big basilicas in Rome. It's still the same faith that is connecting us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one thing while we were in Spain that my mom really relied on, that the fact that even though we were across the ocean, that we were doing the same thing on Sundays, and that we were having the same Mass and the same readings. And she really, that helped her just feel really good about it. And then also while we were over there, we got to travel a little bit to Portugal and France, and then, of course, Italy as well. And so going to Mass in all those different languages, I mean, they were all Romance languages, so they all kind of sounded similar in certain words, but also being able to know what the Mass readings were beforehand and then going into it, and then also just knowing the rhythm of the Mass.
Right.
Like, you could know what was going on without knowing the language. And even when my parents visited us in Spain and went to Mass with us, they knew everything that was going on, even though they don't really know Spanish.
That's true. That's true. I think it's beautiful. And people, when they travel and visit Rome or Holy Land, that idea sometimes is the first time that they are, traveling outside of the country, faith related. And it's something that clicks in their, heart and brain. It's like, oh, we are the same family. And I think it's the beauty of the universality of the church. Mm-hmm. I had a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you have any fear about your dad and your mom as well, but your dad being a pastor of a church, becoming Catholic?
I think, honestly, he enjoyed the fact that he didn't have to be in charge. That was really one of the main draws for him becoming Catholic. Not necessarily the main one, but he loved the fact that he could submit to something. And I mean, that was it for me too. Like, I didn't have to, like, every Protestant's their own pope. Like, I didn't have to be my own pope. I didn't have to be my own magisterium interpreting the Bible for me and how to live my life. I could submit to someone who I knew was smarter than me, the magisterium, who has all the collective knowledge for thousands of years.
Right.
I think he kind of felt the same way. I think the biggest concern for them was just leaving their community, because the church that we grew up at, and they had shared this view for a long time, was we all believe in Jesus and we all love each other, so we're all going to go to this one church together. But then if someone left, it wasn't necessarily for theological reasons, it was more a relational split. And so when someone left, it hurt, because it's like they're leaving me, they're leaving my friendship. We have lots of family at our church that we grew up at, so it's like we're leaving our family, and we had to show them, and I think he's done a good job just showing his friends and his family that are still at that church, I still want to be your friend, I still want to spend lots of time with you as family, but I have just found something that is the fullness of truth that I want to be a part of. And that's a hard thing to navigate when they're completely different mindsets of what church is and what church means.
Right. Yeah, I remember very clearly when going through the process, and your dad asked me with your mom if they could invite their friends from the other church, and I said, sure, why not? And they were like, worry if they feel welcome first, and then if they will behave in a way that, is not against something that we do. And I said, don't worry about it. And I think I just gave some directions through the Mass, where they were, welcoming or admitted in the Catholic faith, and they have their first communion, and it was very powerful. And since they were already baptized, so it was not during the Easter Vigil, so we couldn't do it in any other time. So I really enjoyed that Mass, that particular Mass, knowing their journey, your mom and dad's journey to the Catholic faith.
Yeah, they had some of our family members go to the confirmation. Yeah, he asked some of them afterwards, what did you think? And they're like, that was weird. They still don't really understand it. Yeah, I think one thing that for me and my dad, who were very intellectual, and it was a intellectual assent before it was more of like a faith assent to the Catholic Church for both of us. And I think we can sometimes think that if we just explained it to our family, that they would understand and that they would want to convert as well. But most times every time essentially, it's a heart thing. Mm-hmm. And you have to believe it with your heart and have faith in it. Because that's really what it's all about. Some people criticize the Catholic Church for being all about rituals and rules, but when it gets to that point, you're not doing it right anymore.
Right.
It's always about the heart.
Well, I think it's Pope Benedict who said that our faith is not a set of rules or rites. It's an encounter with Jesus Christ. And I always just like to quote that from Pope Benedict, because I think that explains our faith and how different we are. Because if you talk about, people, like me, just coming from a Catholic family, or people that came to the church in a different journey, we have different ways to get to that encounter with Jesus Christ. Sometimes we follow the rules. Sometimes it's imposed to us because it's everything that we know since we were little. Other times it's people just learning more about the faith and let me just find out the truth, and just coming from a very intellectual approach. But we have to get to that encounter, right? And people that have some kind of experience with Jesus Christ and encounter with God, and then they have to learn all these, the intellectual part of, you call it magisterium, the why we do that, and why we just hold that as the truth, right? Passed on to us by Jesus Christ himself. So those kind of, journeys in that way, it's always, amazing, and always just like to listen more. This is why I was so interested in the channel, and just listening to your story and Katie's, and then Sister Cecilia as well. So that was wonderful.
I think because my dad and I converted in an intellectual way, and then my mom and my husband are also pretty smart, and so they caught on pretty quickly in that way as well. I think they might think, oh, if you're going to be Catholic, you have to be smart. Like, either you're born into it or you have to be smart and intellectual, and then you can convert, when that's really not how it's supposed to be.
Right.
At all. And like, there was recently, I'm not sure if this was just a saint of the day on Hallow, or if it was actually this person's feast day, but I'm not sure what their name was, but they were born with an intellectual disability, and they couldn't really remember anything, but they just said, all I know is Jesus and Mary. And you don't need to assent to anything big to have that like personal encounter,
Right.
and it be at a heart level.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, and when we get together, and sometimes I'm not a person that will have intellectual discussions, or out of the blue, and just I'm not that kind of person. But when we get to that point, it have to be with trust, and it's a relationship, right? But the the Catholic that you see every Sunday, they're at the pew, just being part of the Mass. Just if you ask them, let's talk about the hypostatic union, or explain to me the transubstantiation, it's like, what are you talking about, right? But if we just tell me about your experience with Jesus Christ, in this particular Mass, this Eucharist, what you're bringing. And they know that Jesus is present there. It's his body, blood, humanity, divinity is there. And they believe that. And I believe as a priest, what I am doing in Persona Christi, right, that is a reality. Even though we don't get the whole depth of the theology that we are living in, still, we are part of the same family. Right? I think it's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And talking about that, I would like just to say this for people that, I introduced myself as part of the diaconate program, the director of the program, preparing candidates to be deacons for the Catholic Church in the diocese. That is a different topic, but part of my job, and I have been doing that for a few years now, probably 11 years, and I work with Father Daniel Velasco, who is the director for the Spiritual Direction School, and we offered in the diocese, and I think it started with Monsignor Scott Friend, the silent retreat in the Ignatian tradition, and I think that retreat has been a huge blessing to our diocese. I don't know how many dioceses can offer that to our people, to the people in the diocese, and we had the blessing to offer that with lay directors and clergy that they have been trained in Ignatian Spirituality. So this year, for the first time, we are offering not only the 3-day silent retreat, but the 5-day silent retreat. And St. Ignatius designed this for 30-day silent retreat, right? And then now everyone is ready to take that kind of commitment. But most of the people start with the 3-day and then just move to the 5-day silent retreat. And we are offering that here in the diocese in St. John's Center. And this year we didn't promote it, and we are almost full. I mean, we just have a waiting list most of the time, and we are getting to that point for both in 3-day and 5-day silent retreat. So this is why I didn't make any, noise with the Arkansas Catholic or just the website, because we already have enough people to do the retreat. So the need or the thirst for that kind of encounter with God is there, and 99% of the people coming to the retreat, they are lay people, that they are serious about their faith enough to set apart that time to come to a place to be just quiet, not connected with any technology. And the only thing that they have for the retreat is the Bible and the journal. Is everything that they are allowed to have. It's not any book about, the documents of the church or whatever saint. No, we are just focusing that God is speaking to you in your heart. So we offer the Mass, and they have the time of prayer, and they are directed in that way by a director that meets with them once a day for a few minutes to give some kind of guidance, right? To discern together what God is speaking to you in your heart. And it's always powerful to see how transformative that time is when you are just quiet and have room to listen to what God is saying to you. So that is one of the blessings that I have as a priest, to be part of that, organization, or to offer that kind of spirituality to our diocese, in the support of the priests who are trained in that kind of spirituality, the lay directors, and even the ladies who are working in the kitchen, providing the food for them, and knowing that it's not an interaction. It's like, oh, you like this or not. So it's just cooking for them and knowing that they would take whatever they need, and I think it's very powerful, and I just enjoy just doing that as part of my ministry.
Thank you so much for coming today and being on the podcast. We really enjoyed having you. We might need to have you back to talk about Ignatian Spirituality or the diaconate some more. We really enjoyed having you.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a blessing. Again, this way of having a conversation really helps me just to be open, right? I just share a lot of personal stories, so I always just think I don't want to just share too much. People say, well, but a priest is a human, being, and it goes through ups and downs, but it just has been a blessing to be a priest, and I always just said to my people that I want to be a happy priest, and I think I am a happy priest. Always I want people to know that I'm so blessed to answer to God's call, and to be able to serve my people. And this is everything that I could just wish for. So thank you for having me and give me the room to speak my mind and be myself.
Yeah, we appreciate your vulnerability.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Planet Cross exists to bring you stories like this. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe, share with a friend, and head over to our website, planetcross.com, to find more life-changing stories.